Florida State needs to play Malachi Marshall this season, and they need to do it early.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. We're going to be discussing Florida State news as it relates to the grander scheme of college football later in the show. We're also going to discuss injury news and some not so productive practices here recently for Florida State. What do I think about it? How does it impact this season? I have a pretty strong take on both of those. But to start, and the vast majority of the show will be about Malachi Marshall, Ashton Daniels, Kevin Sperry, and overall, what's going on with Florida State behind center. And I have several points on this we're going to dive into. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a home run this Major League Baseball season. All right, with Ashton Daniels, obviously he's been anointed the starter. That's not a newsflash. Some of you might be saying, well, what's going on with Malachi Marshall? Well, he's looked pretty good at practice. You always need a backup quarterback to start the season. And just being honest, I did not foresee this coming. But it appears that Kevin Sperry really hasn't taken much of a step forward for whatever that's worth. And that's a problem. So they need Malachi Marshall to continue to progress. And I've got 5 really important questions that I'm sure that most Florida State fans want to have answered as well. But most importantly there, can he play very early this season against SMU and Alabama? That'll be the final question. I want to come back. That's going to be the bonus question. I've got 5. That's essentially 6, but it's the theme, if you will, today. We're going to get to that. That's the beginning I want you to think about, and then at the end we'll come back to it. So number 1, can he overtake Ashton Daniels? Sure. The arm is live. He's a mobile guy that can make plays on the run. He was a winner at the junior college level, and he's just an athlete. Do I think he's ripe to take the job early? No, not even close. And that is where the problem begins, because that opens up about, not even trying to be funny, 10 plus additional questions, because timing, as the saying goes, is everything. With the schedule being loaded up front, never good for any college football team, and your coach on the hot seat, I've said this many times, and here it is again, they're going to have a short hook with Ashton Daniels. But the caveat is they're not stupid. They're not going to put somebody in there that's just not ready with the playbook. And this is the part, no matter how much access the media would have, and it's never enough, we don't know, because it's not practice you need to be at. It's in the film room, and it's on the chalkboard, sitting literally behind him. This never happens while they're going over plays. Coaches have access to that and nobody else. If he's not able to pick up the playbook, and remember, Malachi Marshall did not enroll until summer, it's going to be really difficult for him to play a quote-unquote meaningful role against SMU or Alabama. By the way, both of which will run complex post-snap changes and all kinds of stuff. Especially if you play a quarterback that's inexperienced, it's an open book. And even against Ashton Daniels, who's turned the ball over a lot, they're probably going to do that. Alabama's defense in particular is not friendly for quarterbacks that aren't very advanced. So I'm concerned about that. So if he does overtake him, I know this is not what anybody really wants to hear. I would expect it to be middle of the season at the earliest. If it happened before then, it's probably due to injury or Ashton just was awful. Both of those are obviously bad. But the timing of the schedule makes me think that the earliest this would happen would probably be the Virginia game. You could possibly do it Central Arkansas, but I don't think they'd want to show too much, just being honest, because this is how college coaches work. They might split some time, but they're not going to show him a ton right before another conference game. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ashton's so poor in the Alabama game that Malachi would be your starter against Central Arkansas. Anything's possible. But again, the number one premise here, you've got to get him ready to play, because the objective is always to have a backup quarterback that's ready. I think Ashton's a good guy, and he's a solid player, and he'll have some big games, but he's always been a roller coaster. So at some point, I will be floored if Malachi Marshall doesn't start at least a game or two for Florida State, in addition to the fact, we've talked about this several times as well on Locked On Seminoles, Ashton's going to run, and he's going to take some big hits. Not many teams have a quarterback that starts game 1, and goes all the way through game 12 without getting dinged. At some point, Malachi's got to be that guy because it's pretty obvious. They're not going to say it, but he's quarterback 2 right now. Sperry's struggling. It is what it is. Number 2, and this is the one where it's really fun because I think this is the most likely scenario within the first 4 games. So hear me out. Could Malachi Marshall split some time, whether it's early in the year, later, whatever, if Ashton's struggling and or they just want to present another package? Of course. He's a little bit different of a quarterback, but they're both mobile enough. He's not going to run over people. He's, from a physical standpoint, they have nothing in common. And I'm not trying to pick on Malachi, but Ashton's put together. He's a 5th-year senior who's a very strong young man, and he is not jacked around with the weight room. He's taken that very serious, and he's put together like an outside linebacker or a big running back. He's bigger than Chroma. Put it in perspective there. That's a big guy. So the question becomes, how would you do it? I'm just going to give my take on this, and I don't think there's one answer, but this is just for fun. I would use him in specific areas where you think his arm, his rare arm talent, if you will, I know that's an overused term, would be beneficial. Red zone is not necessarily, I know a lot of people think, oh, he's going to run down. No. He's not very big. Ashton is who I'd rather have in the red zone. Unfortunately, that's because of his running ability, not because of his decision-making. He's made a lot of bad decisions, and I do not care one iota what any coach or any person says at Florida State. They're not going to give bad information about their already anointed quarterback from fall camp. They're not going to do it. I'm very worried about him in the red zone, but he does present a hammer. Again, he's 225 pounds. So he's that guy. Could Malachi Marshall still be effective in the red zone? Sure. But he's not running over nobody. He's $170. He's smaller than some of the receivers. Like he needs to add weight. We all know it. He's just one of those guys probably not going to gain a ton. If he does, though, get in those situations, his ability to extend plays, not necessarily run for touchdowns, is what I would look at the most. He might run for a couple, but I think he could at some point be introduced in that if Ashton struggles in the red zone to make the right reads. I hate using this phrase as much as I do, but it's still the end-all be-all. Whoever is better at post-snap reads by the time the Bama game is over is probably going to be your quarterback moving forward in some capacity. Maybe, again, splitting time or the starter. And I think Ashton will eventually get passed by Malachi. I do. But I'm being very kind here. I'm hoping he can pick up the playbook, and that is a lot to ask with him being a summer enrollee. If he'd have enrolled in January, it wouldn't have surprised me if he was the starter now. Missing spring as a quarterback is just really hard. But he was graduating from community college, and that's part of it. So he had to do that, and that's fine. Number 3, speaking of playbook knowledge, what do we think he really knows? Is he comfortable with anything? Is there a certain set of plays, formations? Does he understand the checks at least? Because if he doesn't, like up front, then they're not playing him. 0% chance. If you don't know the protections, yeah, you can't play him. Again, he's 170 pounds soaking wet. He would get squashed like a bug. That is the question that I have no way of knowing. Again, unless you're physically in the meetings with the Florida State coaches, hint, nobody is, that one's hard. And with him coming in the summer, that's another reason I don't think he'll play much early in the year like I would want him to, because I'm just like everybody else. I'm very anxious to see that arm play after play, let him get lathered up and go. But if you don't know the checks, not only do you put yourself in harm, you also put your running backs, your receivers, everybody else in a bad spot, not to maximize play. So the playbook knowledge includes the checks. It includes going tempo if they want to do that or anything else, red zone. And that is a lot to digest in a short time. So if they do play him, and this is why I put these back to back in terms of splitting time and playbook, this is something college coaches and pro, for that matter, loathe even considering, but they'd have to reduce the playbook more than likely. Again, they hate it with every fiber of their being. I've never met a college coach that wanted to do that. Not one. Now, I'm sure there is somebody, and I just haven't met him, but they hate it. They want you to know everything and do it exactly the way they want. That's college coaches. So will Malachi get in if he's not fully engulfed with the playbook? Probably only in a blowout situation. Or again, Ashton's so bad, they just, let's just see what happens here. We're getting smoked anyway. Let's just go out there and throw him in. Those are the two situations. But by the time they get to October, there's no more excuses because that's a full month of going through practice and practice and practice. By then, he better have it pretty well down. If not, he may not be the answer long-term, and it'll show on the field because eventually they're going to have to play him one way or the other. Number 4, we're Florida State running. This is the one that I don't know what the answer is to this. I'm not going to really try to answer it. You make your own judgment. When I say run him, I mean intentional, quarterback counter, quarterback draw, quarterback lead, quarterback sweep, anything where he is quote unquote naked outside the pocket, running naked, as they say. I don't know. He's 170 pounds. It is super high risk. And if he gets injured, and the media across the board has said this, Sperry, it's not looking that great. And he's your quote unquote backup if Marshall gets banged up, especially if Daniels. If Daniels gets banged up, I think Marshall will run very little because they don't have much confidence in Sperry. That's my opinion. Do I expect that to always be the case? No, maybe down the line once he has a better grasp of everything, they might do it every once in a while. Maybe a naked bootleg where he down on the goal line, he has like a tight end that runs across and he's got the run throw option. Sure. But just running counter and stuff, he's just not big enough. And that's part of Norvell's offense. So I'd be curious to see how he would adjust to that. And number 5 here, this is a big one. And again, no idea. Do the Florida State players believe in Marshall if he gets his chance? And will they be a part of the reason he gets his chance if for any reason, pick whatever one you want, Ashton Daniels comes out of the lineup, injury, not playing well, not seeing the field well, has a bad pick, whatever. Do the players believe in him? I have no idea. But same thing. Florida State's coaching staff has to prepare like this is all staffs. You have to prepare like your quarterback is going to get banged up or need to come out of a game. Because if that scenario comes about and you haven't prepared that way, boy, it goes south real quick. You have to have contingency plans in football, obviously, quarterback in particular. But do the players believe in him? I can't imagine they don't based on the film I've seen, but we just see the arm action. We don't see him in the film room. We don't see him in the meetings and all that. If they think he's able to handle that and then they see what we've seen based on the field, then it shouldn't be very hard. But again, I have no idea, but that's really important. So going back to the original premise here with Daniels, can he be the guy? I guess that's the best way to put it at Florida State, not just now, but next year too. Like he's got, I want to say he's got 2 more years of eligibility post 2026. Could he overtake Ashton Daniels this year? I think he can, but there are a couple of really big ones that you got to answer. The playbook, how the players feel about him, understanding the checks is, by the way, part of that playbook. And that's stuff we just don't get to see as media. There's no way to do it. And I know this is mean. I just don't trust college coaches at all, especially with injury news. But this is right next to it. Fall camp, how many times have you seen a college or pro coach, for that matter, say, well, my starting quarterback's terrible, or my starting quarterback may lose his. They're just not. They're going to lie, or they're going to give coach speak. I don't blame Norvell for that, because if he didn't, he'd get hammered for that too. Lose. So I'm not going to be mad at Mike on that. But I know that at some point this year, Malachi is going to need to play, and I think he has the higher ceiling. He just does. I want to see him play this year in meaningful circumstances. So maybe I'm greedy, and maybe I'm overextending on this. Maybe Ashton will surprise. Hell, I don't know. But at some point, based on how Mike runs his offenses, my guess is at bare minimum, Ashton Daniels gets dinged. Even if it's just a quarter, 2 quarters, at some point, Malachi Marshall is going to be behind center, running the offense for Florida State. Might be against Miami. Who knows? We need to know what he looks like now, definitively. Because remember, regardless of what happens with Ashton this year, he ain't back next year. You need to know based on game film what he's able to do. I don't give a crap about practice because he's not getting hit. How does he handle adversity? How does he handle Doak Campbell? How does he handle road game? All of that. The only way to do it, he must be live, in other words, getting hit, and he must be running the full offense. I hope we get to see it sooner than later, but that is a lot to ask with him being a summer enrollee. So we'll see. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Florida State from a positional standpoint. and the sloppiness at practice, I'm a little worried about it. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little worried about it. That is next, right here on Locked On Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. If you've got a sweet tooth like I do, you know how it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. That's why cotton candy 5 Hour Energy shots bring that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. This is a classic cotton candy taste you can remember, but with a tasty caffeine boost and zero sugar. It's a quick, easy way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. If you've always liked cotton candy, that's one of my favorite things when I used to go to fairs when I was a kid. But eating sweets probably isn't the best. Here's an opportunity for you, cotton candy from 5 Hour Energy. Bring on the sweetness with cotton candy 5 Hour Energy shots, available online now at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. I'm a little bit concerned about some of the injury stuff that's happened with Florida State. And if you follow this show, you know I'm a worrywart. That's just my nature. That's not going to change. I'm 100% a glass half empty kind of guy. To that end, I don't know if I'm just being overcautious because it's just been ridiculous the last 2 years how many injuries Florida State had, and they just nagging would not go away. This also goes back to Norvell lying about injuries. So many guys last year, he's going to be back. He's fine. Heard that about Boggs early in the season last year, barely played. Landon Thomas barely played. So I don't believe anything he says about injuries, which, by the way, here's your PSA for the year. If you gamble, never believe any coach at any level about injuries on their players, especially Mike Norvell. He is awful with it. To that end, they have Boggs coming back, and we just keep hearing he'll be ready. He should be ready. It should be. That's a lot to ask Jasen Lopez to start game one, although he's a rare player, and I'm very high on him. And by the end of this year, would it shock me if Jasen Lopez started at the slot? No. He's just really good. He's already pretty much, from what all reports say, pick a site, pick an insider. Lopez is probably going to be your punt returner as a true freshman. That's a lot of responsibility, and good for Jasen. But I'm still concerned about the injuries to Boggs because that's a guy I saw in high school multiple times. Holy cow, was he good. He's State of Florida's all-time leading receiver. Florida receivers. He just can't seem to get over the injury bug 100%. He's back at practice, but as the saying goes, being back is not the same as being in game shape. There's no shortcut with the practices in North Florida. They're awful. I cannot imagine trying to practice with a helmet for 3-4 weeks like Florida State's trying to do with helmets on it. It's been in, even for the state of Florida, Panhandle area, hotter than normal. For those of you who don't live down this area, it's grotesque. 92 is a low day, and I'm not exaggerating, before heat index. So bringing anybody back from any kind of lower body injury is probably not very much fun. Is Boggs going to be 100% ready? I don't know. I'm sure we're not going to get all the information that we need about Quintravion Wisner, and I get it, but he missed not one but both scrimmages. It's like, good Lord, they just went out and got this guy to be kind of like the confidant, if you will, for Usman Croman. I think he would be really good. I mean, he ran for 1,000 yards at freaking Texas. The guy's good. That sucks. And then on top of that, on the defensive side of the ball, and maybe it's because I know him, we'd heard good things about Isaiah Williams, the linebacker out of Tavares, Florida, and he is a freak. Every school in the country offered him. And he gets banged up in fall camp right after he starts playing well and then missed second scrimmage, etc. Freshmen, especially a linebacker in today's world where you got to train every single day for RPO, cannot miss reps. Not play inside linebacker. That's just not realistic, because I don't care if you're the reincarnation of the greatest linebacker of all time. Pick whichever one you want. You can put Ernie there. When he was at Florida State, he's as good a linebacker as played at Florida State. It doesn't matter. It's about reps. Run gap fits and all that. Why is it that Florida State always seems to get good news? A guy's coming on like a freshman or something. Last year it was Boggs. Then they immediately get hurt. It's just insane. And I know I'm complaining, but that drives me nuts. And the second part of this does as well. Well, injuries are a part of the game. And I am 100% complaining. I do not deny that. This next part is just more concerning. And I get it that it's hot and it's annoying and all that. But after winning 5 games last year, multiple sources and multiple outlets, for that matter, have stated that Florida State's recent practices, and I'm trying to be delicate here, but weren't very good. They're tired of hitting each other and all that, but every team has that problem. It sucks beating up on your friends, and I'm sure there's fights and all that, because that's what football is. People grinding against each other. They're going to get under each other's skin. But guys not snapping the ball at the right time, when the ball snapped, sometimes guys not getting off to snap at the, just pure mental, debilitating, horrible football has seeped into practice, and it's random. What does that sound like? And yes, again, I'm glass half empty guy. That sounds like the last 2 seasons. Florida State's in the lead. Like, take the Pittsburgh game last year. That one probably sticks in my craw the most. You're up by a touchdown at halftime, and you shoot yourself in the foot repeatedly in the second half, and you lose. Mental errors in practice oftentimes lead to mental errors in games. If they don't clean that stuff up, that's a problem. They're going to be in, this is crazy to say, game week prep in a week. And we're talking about really sloppy practices. And I'm not talking about like just one position or one player, pretty broad. That's very concerning to me. I don't know what it's from, and I'm not sure there is a single source, but lack of leadership, not enough guys bought in. You could guess on anything, and it's probably a combination. And yes, the heat's probably part of it too. But that just can't happen when you're coming off a 5-win season and make me feel good about it. Florida State needs to figure that out ASAP, or this season will, quite honestly, just take a big downturn in games 2 and 3, and the season will be a dumpster fire real quick. You can't play haphazardly against SMU and Alabama. Both those teams think they can make the playoff for good reason. That's not going to fly. So we need to see that change, and then we also need to see it come to fruition on the other side when the Florida State Seminoles play New Mexico State, because if you can't be consistent against them, how are you going to do it against SMU? Is going to show you a lot more formations, going to try to trick you, try to make you feel uncomfortable, jumpy, 5th-year senior quarterback and Kevin Jennings and all that. All the opportunities to fail will be there. If you're not disciplined in practice, I'm not going to buy that you're going to be disciplined against SMU. Sorry, that's just not how I roll. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Florida State from a college football standpoint. What is really the problem? Why are just a handful of teams elevating so much above the others? There's 10 or so. There's been a separation even from the elite programs. There's been several that have been left behind, Florida State included. Can they get back into it? That is next, right here on Locked On Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know what's going to happen with somebody hitting a home run today in MLB, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. Pretty easy to play here. It doesn't matter if it's your team, another team, heck, your team could be off that day. Just pick somebody that's going to hit a home run, and if you are correct, you can apply a profit boost to your next bet on FanDuel, get extra winnings. It's pretty straightforward. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged no matter what. Again, it doesn't matter if your team is playing. You could pick somebody that you hate, but he's going up against a matchup that you really like, and that could matter. This is the bottom line for me. Pick whatever team you want, but this is just a theme. We're to the point of the year where I know a lot of teams won't admit it publicly, but if they're out of the race, they're going to play young pitchers, young shortstops, center field. All the guys they drafted are going to come up. That means there's going to be a lot more opportunities for teams that are in the race to hit home runs. Pick a player going up against a team that's a cellar dweller. That's what I would do every single day. Up to you, though. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick for who's hitting a home run. Play ball and swing for the fences with FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. There are just a handful of teams now that seems like have the advantage in college football. And it used to be Florida State was at the top of that ladder. Well, that ladder has been chopped into about 50 pieces for FSU. And we know money's at the top of the ladder in terms of what's going on. So that's the easy, obvious answer. Don't have to dig too deep for that one. But what else is it that makes the following teams continue to go up while Florida State stays flatlined? Just want to present my thoughts on this. This is just a couple of minutes, pretty basic. Take it for what it's worth. Let's use Oregon for an example. It's probably the easiest one. They've got Phil Knight. He's the greatest booster in the history of college football. He owns frickin' Nike. And by the way, he is an Oregon graduate. To that end, everybody's got an edge, but there's still something else. The culture at programs that have money, that's great. The town, that matters. Like, I'll be honest, I know this will make a lot of people mad, but a lot of head coaching decisions on whether they come or go comes down to the wife. True story. I'm not going to go into name, but that is not an opinion. 100% fact. To that end, school, even like Oregon, which is kind of an outpost, it's just middle of the state of Oregon, it's not considered like a great place to live, is able to keep Dan Lanning. Dan has been coveted by SEC schools, among others. And I'm sure Florida State, although they're not going to admit this, if they could have had Lanning, they'd have found a way to get rid of Norvell last year. No doubt about it. Why can they keep him besides just money? It can't be just that because Dan's already rich. Why wouldn't he come back down south? And for those who don't know, Dan used to coach at Alabama and Georgia. So he's familiar with Dixie. He likes the recruiting down here. He focuses on it. Florida, Alabama, Georgia. He focuses on the exact same turf that FSU does. There's something deeper. And I think it is the administrations. And I'm just using Oregon as one single pillar, but I'll dig in a little further momentarily. The teams that are winning, yeah, they got money, but they have the people up above the coaching staff, meaning the athletic department, the board of trustees, the presidents, and oh yes, the boosters, all basically on the same page, or at least really close to it. Now ask yourself the following question. Where's Florida State in that? A C, a D, or my grade, an F? The communication and the belief in each other at all those levels has to be very close at bare minimum to be a consistent college football playoff contender. That's why Oregon, the one I've been using as the example, is a contender every year. Might even be the best team in the country this season. Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Miami, Texas, LSU. Heck, they got a new coach and they've went out of their way. Their AD had the 40 top boosters for LSU come to his house to discuss how they can get more NIL for players. They're on the same page, even in year one under Kiffin. When are we going to hear about something where Florida State makes that progress compared to the big box picture of the elite in college football? I know I'm waiting, and I'm guessing that you're waiting too. And oh, am I anxious to hear it? Because quite honestly, Florida State is not going to be a major player in college football until the people up above, way above the coaching ranks, those guys up there making all the decisions, they have the doctorates, the law degrees, and all that. We're all on the same playing field and agree with each other, which, again, this is very important, includes the Florida State boosters. Right now, they don't. They need something to change, and I don't know what all the parts are. I have a feeling that it's more than Norvell. But until they do, Florida State's not going to be a part of that party with Texas and Ohio State and Oregon and Miami, et cetera. That's got to happen sooner than later. And I've dug into this deep, spoken to a lot of sources around these programs. It's the same stuff at every school. It's the people above. Florida State's got a lot of changes that it needs to make. And until it does, it's probably going to be a very average football program. Thank you very much for checking out Locked On Seminoles. I appreciate you stopping in. Please like and subscribe if you have not already. And make sure you share this podcast. We will see you again soon.